Hey everyone, my name's Tomato Anus, also known as the Soft Stump, and this is an any % speedrun to beat Dark Souls 3 without using the teardrop glitch. This run is performed by Moochie, the current world record holder for this category, who helped me write the script to make sure it's all as accurate as possible. If you'd prefer to watch this run without commentary, it's uploaded to Moochie's channel and linked in the description, and so is the link to Moochie's record, which is also commentary free and on his channel. Additionally, this run is done on version 1.08 Regulation 1.22 of the game, which is a specific patch that's used mainly for the fact that it's a patch from before From Software nerfed Carthus Rouge, which is a consumable that applies a bleed status effect to your weapon. Like I said in the intro line, this is an any % no teardrop speedrun. The teardrop glitch lets the player bypass kill boxes using the Tears of Denial spell, which adds a lot of out of bounds to the run. It's allowed in the standard any % category, but this category specifically disallows it to provide a different kind of challenge for the run. It's still an any % run though, so other glitches are allowed, so if that isn't your cup of tea, I've also linked the any % glitchless record by Forza in the description. Also, if you haven't seen yet, we here at Tomato Anus have already covered speedruns of Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, and Bloodborne, which are all available for viewing on this channel. None of those videos are necessary to watch before watching this one, but there is one concept that briefly makes an appearance in each video that'll be making a return in this video. So, if you've never played Dark Souls 3 before, it's similar to the previous two in setup, where it's a punishing action role-playing game with exploration being a core mechanic. Bonfires still serve as checkpoints, we still earn souls as currency for killing things, and we still have a continuous game world to explore with caution. In order to beat the game, we have a list of things we need to do during the run. Similar to what I talked about in the video covering Bloodborne though, this list is by no means a comprehensive list of all the things that need to be done. There's a lot more that's done in the run that's required to beat the game, but this list isn't supposed to be all-encompassing, just a guide for more casual viewers to have to help keep track of how far into the run and game we are. Alright, let's get into the run.
Pick it up, Gavin, he's gaining on us.
That's right. I'm still coming for you guys, just like from the last time.
Don't worry, I got this.
Hey Gavin, now that we're out of the cave, I can hear you more clearly. Can you repeat what you said earlier about you now having a genetic predisposition for male pattern baldness?
Oh, that it's alright that I now have a genetic predisposition for male pattern baldness.
Because I have keeps.
Did you know that 2 out of 3 men will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35?
Oh yeah, I know where this one's going.
The best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still have hair left. Keeps treatment plans are doctor recommended and delivered straight to your door at half the cost of a traditional pharmacy, and I think the results speak for themselves. Thankfully, Keeps offers 24/7 support with a network of expert medical advisors, prescribers, and care specialists, along with each plan coming with a full year of unlimited messaging, so you can message the doc about anything, anytime. Kinda like me with your mom.
Dude, that's not cool.
Yeah, Gavin, I'd really prefer if you didn't.
Whether you're trying to keep your hair or stimulate growth or just take better care of your hair, Keeps has you covered. Plus, they have an award-winning thickening shampoo and conditioner system.
Hey, can we go back to the story about how you lost your hat and found it again?
Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/tomato or click the link in the description. That's keeps.com/tomato.
You could do this that whole time?
A couple things are important when it comes to character creation. The gender we play as doesn't really matter too much, but Moochie prefers to play as female. This is solely because the scream for the female character is a lot louder and easier to hear than the male character, which can make a glitch called Spook Quit Out easier to perform. Moochie chooses Assassin as the character's class, since we then start with the Spook spell, which is what's used in the Spook Quit Out glitch. Spook is a spell that silences your footsteps and rolls, and also negates fall damage up to a certain extent. If you fall from too high, it'll still kill you. A side effect of the spell is that should you fall far enough to take fall damage, there's a slight delay between when you land and when the fall damage is dealt. To perform a Spook Quit Out, Moochie is going to cast Spook, then drop a large distance and pull up the menu to quit out as he falls. Then, the moment that he hits the ground, Moochie will quit out of the game and load back in. It's difficult to see because of the menu being in the way, but the moment that Moochie lands, he still has health thanks to the fall damage delay that's incurred by Spook. The location where Moochie lands is considered to be stable ground, which means that as soon as he touches it, his position in the game's memory is updated to where he's standing. By then quitting out and loading back in, he'll load in at his most recent stable ground position, which is where he landed, but he avoids the delayed fall damage thanks to the quit out. And that's Spook Quit Outs. Lets you pretty much dodge fall damage. Back to character creation, Moochie chooses the black firebombs as his burial gift. The gifts aren't really all that useful for us in the run, but having some firebombs speeds up the fight at the start of the run against Gundyr. With that all set, Muchi begins the run. Right away, we skip a cutscene and unequip our head and chest pieces to get our equip load below a 30% weight ratio, that way we get max distance rolls. Up here, Muchi grabs the Ashen Estus flask, which when used refills some focus points or FP, which is the blue bar that drains when you use spells. We won't be really using it for that purpose though. In this game, you have a total amount of flasks, and you get to choose how you want them allotted between regular Estus flasks, which heal you, and Ashen Estus flasks. Later we'll be allotting our flasks so that they're all regular, meaning grabbing the Ashen one here was to get an extra regular one later on. When running past the Grave Warden on the left up here, Muchi blocks, which reduces his hitbox slightly so that he can continue in a straight line without getting hit. We then initiate the fight against Udex Gundyr by pulling out the coiled sword and poking him to do something. To open the fight, Muchi will do 13 R1 attacks. During the first 5 attacks, Gundyr takes reduced damage. Muchi then circles around and does 2 attacks into Gundyr's back once his health bar appears. The remaining 6 R1 attacks are done as we circle around Gundyr to strafe his attacks. The R1 attacks are then followed by 2 charged two-handed attacks as Gundyr changes phases, which are then followed up by 3 firebombs. The first firebomb staggers him, with the second dealing extra damage due to him being staggered and taking extra fire damage in his second phase. Muchi drops our S-Stock since we only needed the starting sword for this fight, and it frees up an inventory slot to save a menuing input later in the run. After beginning to open the door to leave the arena, we do a quit out to skip the animation since this run is timed with in-game time, and doing a quit out skips the animation of the door opening so we don't have to sit here and lose time while we wait. An added benefit of quit outs in this game is that they also de-aggro all enemies and reset them to their spawn positions. Muchi's about to enter Firelink Shrine, where he's going to do the first shopping segment of the run. On our shopping list are 3 Homeward Bones and a short sword. The short sword is going to be our main weapon for the first chunk of the run, and the Homeward Bones are consumables that can be used to bring us back to Firelink Shrine or the last bonfire we rested at. There's a neat little trick when menuing that's worth going over just to show the level of detail in speedruns when it comes to optimizations. In the shop menu, Homeward Bones are located here while the short sword is located here. In Dark Souls 3, if you press either R2 or L2 in a menu like this, then you move up or down 3 spaces. Additionally, if you're hovering over an item that's on the edge of the shop and then press the button to navigate towards the edge, you wrap to the other side of the menu and either up or down 1 depending on which direction you moved. Just think of it as kinda like a book with how you navigate, where if you're moving to the right, then you go down a line like you're continuing to read a sentence. We can take advantage of this as well by using R2 and L2 to navigate slightly faster. So we need to get from the Homeward Bones to the short sword. If you move just straight there, it's 4 button presses with you having to press the same button 3 times in a row. It's slightly faster to be able to alternate what buttons you're pressing so you're utilizing more fingers, so instead Muchi navigates the shop by going up 1, then pressing R2 to go down 3, then pressing left to wrap to the right side of the shop and up 1 line, then left once more to end up at the short sword. It's still technically 4 button presses, but it's easier to execute quickly compared to a method that requires you to press the same button 3 times. Another thing worth mentioning real quick is that Dark Souls 3 has a menu delay where after certain actions like purchasing something, your next input will count to the previous purchase for a very short time, so that's something you have to account for as well. Okay, time for the quick shopping segment. Now you can see why that required pausing. After his shopping spree, Muchi inserts the coiled sword that he ripped out of Gundyr into the fire pit to ignite the bonfire. During the insertion animation, we equip the Homeward Bones we just bought in addition to the short sword and headpiece that we unequipped earlier. The short sword is lighter than the S-Stock, so we can have the headpiece equipped now and still be under 30% for our equip load. Muchi also unequipped the firebombs, and after interacting with the lit bonfire, traveled to the High Wall of Lothric. High Wall is a deceptively hard segment. It's very easy to lose a lot of time. One of the recurring themes to this speedrun though is that consistent pathing and stamina management during running segments both trivializes enemies and makes things more consistent, which helps out a lot in places like High Wall. Muchi is about to perform something called an action ledge cancel. There's some gold pine resin resting on a ledge, and by interacting with it the moment before he's about to fall off the ledge, then Muchi completes the action of picking up the resin, but the animation of picking it up is interrupted and negated by him falling off the ledge. Gold pine resin adds 95 lightning damage to your weapon for 60 seconds, which is really good for early bosses, especially ones that are weak to lightning. This part coming up with the 3 enemies on top of the stairs is also pretty scary because you can easily get stun locked, but as long as you can keep your pathing and stamina management consistent, then you pretty much know what you're dealing with for the most part. A lot of getting through this area cleanly is also reading enemies that you run past, as they might go for an attack that requires you to roll to dodge since you won't be able to strafe the attack in time. Coming up here is the first Spook quit out of the run. Muchi will cast Spook on himself, and then as we discussed earlier, will leap off of the building and pull up the menu to quit out as he falls. By then quitting out the moment he hits the ground and his position updates in the game, then when he loads back in, he'll be standing on the ground where he landed, completely circumventing the fall damage. When we load back in, right away we equip the gold pine resin that we just picked up and begin making our way to Emma, High Priestess of Lothric Castle, who's sitting in a cathedral that doubles as the boss arena for the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. By talking to Emma, we receive the small Lothric banner, which is a key item that lets us progress to the undead settlement later on. Because where Emma is doubles as a boss arena, that means it's unstable ground, so if we quit out, we'll load back in at the entryway to the room, which is exactly what Muchi does after grabbing the banner from Emma and healing up. This saves the trek of running back across the room to go outside, and also skips most of the healing animation since we healed right before quitting out. When Muchi loads back in, he'll begin running across from the cathedral towards the boss arena for Vort of the Boreal Valley. While he does this, Muchi swaps from his staff in his left hand to his shield in preparation for something called a resin cancel. If you hold L1 to have your shield up while you apply resin to your weapon, it cancels the end of the animation, letting you get moving at full capacity again slightly sooner. Muchi will perform a resin cancel as soon as he loads in after initiating the fight against Vort. Vort is weak to lightning, and despite my utmost temptation, I won't be quoting sports legend Lightning McQueen in this video like I did in the last one. Vort staggers after 15 R1 attacks, but doesn't get staggered if the 15th hit is during his phase transition where he screeches at us. Because of this, Muchi hits Vort 14 times, then stands around and recovers his stamina while getting covered in spittle from Vort's phase transition scream. As long as our positioning is correct after hitting him for the 15th time to stagger him, Vort responds by doing either a slow charge or a slow slam. It's pretty much a coin flip for which he does, but in this run Vort did the slow slam, which is easier to deal with and also faster. After performing a quit out to skip the door opening animation and skipping a cutscene, we're brought to the Undead Settlement, which again is only accessible after you receive the banner from Emma. Our arrival to the Undead Settlement also marks the arrival of some of the most notorious enemies in the run. They're waiting for us on the other side of the gate up ahead and are brimming with anticipation for their grand reveal. Dogs. To save on resources, enemies that are off-screen in Dark Souls 3 kind of teleport to you and aren't rendered every frame. Dogs, being the clever bastards that they are, take full advantage of this computational decision by occasionally just appearing on top of you thanks to the teleporting thing coupled with the fact that they're so damn fast. A moment ago, Muchi picked up some charcoal pine bundles which apply 110 fire damage to your weapon for around 10 seconds, which we'll be using on a boss later on. Up ahead on the right, after running along the cliffside, we're going to get ambushed by a couple thralls, but Muchi will perform what's called the thrall jump, where he's able to leap across a gap to the back part of this section. The game is totally caught off guard by this and spawns in an enemy as if it were a teenager hiding their porn from their parent that knocked out of respect for the teen's privacy but asserted their authority as the parent by coming in anyway. Muchi then casted Spook on himself since right here he drops off a high up ledge and Spook completely negates the fall damage. Muchi then does a quit out when opening this door. On the other side of this door is a trick elevator that goes both up and down. We need to go down, but the elevator will be going up when we load back in. All we need to do though is cast Spook on ourselves again and drop down the shaft, letting us skip having to wait for the elevator to go all the way up and back down again. Coming up, we have one of the bigger skips in the run, Faron Keep Skip, or FKS for short. FKS skips having to run through the entire Faron Keep area, including lighting the 3 beacons and opening the main door, and overall saves around 130 seconds. If you've watched the previous Dark Souls videos on this channel or the recent Bloodborne video, you're likely about to experience a minor fit of deja vu. So if you fall into a pit or something similar that's intended to kill you, you pass through 2 invisible planes. The first invisible plane is the death cam plane that when touched switches your camera to the death camera that's at a fixed height and typically looks down on the player in a cinematic fashion. The second plane is the kill plane that actually kills you. These two planes are positioned with the death cam plane above the kill plane, and in certain places it's possible to touch just the top plane, the death cam one, without touching the one that actually kills us. Muchi is currently en route to a specific spot in the Road of Sacrifices where the death cam plane is placed a little too high. After dropping down and quitting out to reset some dogs, Muchi will position his feet in a specific way and use the health bar as a visual cue for angling. He'll then run off the ledge, and the instant he drops down slightly, turn around and jump back up. This had him nick the death cam plane, fixing the camera's height to look either down on us or up on us, depending on where we are relative to the height the camera is fixed at. The big upside to being in the death cam is that the game stops loading in new assets. Any assets that are already loaded in will stay in, but anything unloaded will not load in, no matter how close we get to it. This includes things like enemies, walls, and doors. They just won't load in if they weren't loaded in when the death cam was activated. This means that a shortcut door for Fair and Keep isn't loaded in, however, any events tied to the door are loaded in. Because of this, we can walk through where the shortcut door would be and open the door from the other side. After then quitting out to reset the game back to normal, when we load back in, the door will still be open. Muchi just grabbed the grass crest shield and some green blossoms and is now approaching the shortcut door. Green blossoms are consumables that increase your stamina regeneration for 60 seconds, and the grass crest shield increases stamina recovery while equipped and out, and the effects of the blossoms in the shield stack. Something worth mentioning real quick is that fully depleting your stamina locks you out of using it until it fully recovers, unless you roll, and the grass crest shield makes it so that we recover over the cap of our max stamina, which is a waste of stamina recovery time. So the general stamina management idea throughout the run is to kind of bounce between stamina being almost full and almost empty. Now that we're loaded back in, we have to backtrack real quick to grab the Sellsword Twin Blades and a Fair and Coal before progressing any further. The Twin Blades will be our main weapon for the second half of the game, and the Coal lets us infuse the Twin Blades with a sharp gem that we'll get later in the run. Infusing a weapon with a sharp gem makes the weapon, well, sharp. This lowers the weapon's base damage but increases scaling with dexterity, making the weapon way stronger in the long run if you have a lot of dex. So we're now on our way to the next boss fight, which is against the Abyss Watchers. In categories that have you fight the Watchers unimpeded, it's considered to be a very hard fight, but luckily we have a way to make them just a touch easier in this run. For some reason, there's a spot in the Watchers boss arena that's marked as stable ground. After doing a quit out to quickly open up some doors outside the arena, Muchi is going to position himself using some visual cues, then perform a charged attack. This will move him forward into the arena and onto the exact position that's stable ground, where after waiting for a moment to make sure the game saves that as his most recent position, Muchi will then run forward to trigger the cutscene and fight. Normally, boss arenas are all unstable ground, so if you quit out, then you're back outside and have to interact with the fog gate to re-enter the arena. Because we've touched stable ground in the boss arena before the second quit out though, then when we load back in, we'll spawn inside the boss arena. When you quit out, the boss's AI is turned off, only to then be reactivated by you interacting with the fog gate, but because we spawn inside the boss arena, we don't have to interact with the fog gate, meaning the boss's AI never gets activated and they just stand there, menacingly. Muchi pops a gold pine resin for this fight and just starts wailing away on the Watcher. It doesn't matter too much what direction you hit the Watcher towards, just as long as you're generally in the spot that Muchi pushes them to in front of the stairs, as that's where the second Watcher spawns for phase 2 of the fight. Between attacks, Muchi lets his stamina regenerate until it's just past the end of the FP bar, just before the stamina bar is fully filled. This is because that's right around the amount of stamina required to do 6 full attacks, which is the same amount of attacks we get from a full stamina bar right now, so it's slightly more optimal to not let the bar fully recharge if we can get the same amount of hits by attacking slightly sooner. After the fight, the door in the back of the arena will open up when we approach it, but it's pretty slow, so ideally we'd like to quit out to skip it. The only issue with that is that most of the arena is unstable ground, so if we quit out, then we'd spawn back on the other side of the arena and we'd have to run all the way across to the door. Luckily, there's a small spot alongside the wall in the back of the arena that is stable ground that Muchi touches here after defeating the Watcher. This makes it so that when we load back in, not only will we have skipped the door opening animation, but we'll be near the door thanks to the stable ground spot we just touched, skipping having to run all the way back across the arena. When we leave the boss arena, we're going to equip the charcoal pine bundle we grabbed earlier and unequip the Ashen Estus flask, since we won't be using the Ashen Estus for the rest of the run and we'll be allocating that flask to be a normal one in a bit. Now in the Catacombs of Carthus, Muchi's going to leap down to the floor below, run past a skeleton, and roll through an illusory wall to lead himself to that sharp gem that I mentioned earlier. Like I mentioned before, when infused into our twin blades, the scaling of the weapon will increase. In this specific case, the dexterity scaling will increase from a C grade to an A. This means we benefit more from each level of dexterity. So the next skip in the run is called Fence Skip, and it's going to happen pretty quickly. After running down these stairs and past even more skeletons and dodging a skeleton ball, Muchi is going to position himself next to a pot alongside a railing. There he'll angle his camera using his health bar as a visual cue and then rhythmically alternate between pressing W and D on his keyboard, which pops the character up and over the railing and down to below. This skips us having to go all the way around this area the long way, saving around 14 seconds in this category. Muchi will do a quit out at the top of the stairs here to reset a skeleton below us that might follow us up, and also reset a skeleton at the top of the stairs that might start attacking. Once we load back in, we'll grab the Grave Warden's ashes that are in front of us, which makes Karthus Rouge and Titanite shards available for purchase back at Firelink Shrine. Karthus Rouge is the consumable I mentioned at the start of the video that got nerfed in a later patch, which is why speedrunners play on this patch. The consumable applies a bleed status effect to your weapon for 60 seconds. When bleed is applied, each attack builds up an invisible meter on the enemy that when filled does a burst of damage based on a percentage of the enemy's max health. It's especially powerful late game, especially on this patch. While running through this area, Muchi re-equipped our armor in preparation for the next boss fight. The boss arena is right behind these doors that we do a quit out on, and the fight is against High Lord Wolnir. Wolnir has 3 bracelets that we need to destroy, and you can essentially consider each bracelet as a phase. Wolnir will throw out attacks, and our response to each attack is pretty scripted, like if he does a certain attack then we'll respond with 4 hits, stuff like that. The first bracelet takes 9 hits to destroy, and after it's destroyed, the hitbox for the second bracelet isn't immediately active, so we fill the time by using a charcoal pine bundle. The second bracelet then breaks after 10 hits, but Muchi will let his stamina regen slightly before doing the 10th hit. That way when he runs over to the third bracelet right after, he has enough stamina to get in 4 quick R1 attacks. After the first 4 attacks, Muchi will reposition himself, then do a charged R2 followed by 2 R1 attacks to finish up the fight. While we wait for Wolnir to wither and wear away, Muchi uses the souls we got from killing Vort and the Abyss Watchers to get a huge chunk of souls, then quits out to quickly return to the entrance of Wolnir's arena. So coming up in the run is a skip called Doll Skip, which is kind of the big skip of this category. Doll Skip lets us skip the Irithyll Seal, meaning we can access the Irithyll of the Boreal Valley area without having the small doll in our inventory. Muchi is going to Temple of Doom this bridge for later on, and then begin the setup for this skip by running up some collision to the right of some stalagmites, hitching right, and then jumping left to skip past a stalagmite and be sort of out of bounds. Here Muchi will continue running and jumping around the collision on all these jumbled rocks and stalagmite, and will make it to a spot where he'll briefly stand still and line himself up using some visual cues with his head and the textures of the rocks. After casting Spook, Muchi will roll forwards through the rock he was aiming at and drop down to land on a ledge. There we'll briefly walk on a narrow invisible balance beam of a ledge that's referred to as a seam and prepare for a sort of fall damage cancel. Our goal is to position ourselves so that when we run forward, we'll be able to run into and against a slope as we slide down it, and also get a jump in as we're sliding down. To position himself correctly, Muchi typically lines up his head with a light and dark triangle in the rock textures and aims the middle of his head for the middle of the 2 triangles. In this run, we're a bit lower down than usual, so Muchi had to align the middle of his head more towards the left side of the light triangle that's on the left. Once he's in position, Muchi then runs forward against the slope and jumps into it. In this game, if you run against a slope or ledge and jump as you're sliding or falling off of it, you can briefly get a second roll in midair. A property of rolling in this game is that you have a short window during it where you're truly invincible. If you're under 70% equip load, as we are, then that window is 13 frames long. So during our rolls, we have 13 frames where we're invincible, and those 13 frames are referred to as iframes. Muchi is going to run against the slope and jump as he's sliding off of it to get the midair roll as I mentioned a moment ago, and he's going to time the roll so that he both passes through the death plane and hits the ground during the 13 frame window where he's invincible, effectively canceling any fall damage. The thing about doing this though is that we still pass through the death camera plane normally, activating it like we did earlier with Fair and Keep Skip. Activating the death camera is the whole point of this escapade we just took out of bounds, as Doll Skip centers around having the death camera. Okay, let's see all these concepts combined for a glorious couple of seconds to activate the death camera. Now that we have the death camera active, we're going to be making our way through Smoldering Lake back up to that bridge that we destroyed earlier, which will climb up like a ladder. In this area, Muchi will be grabbing 4 large Titanite shards, 2 of which are invisible, which we'll use later to upgrade our weapon. This area is littered with invisible walls and features that have collision that we have to work our way around, but nothing is impossible when you're able to turn Dark Souls into Diablo like Muchi did. While Muchi makes his way through this area and eventually climbs up the ladder bridge, I'd just like to take a moment to say that I hope you're all doing well. I know at times it can be hard to see the positives in life, but please do remember that no feeling is final. How you feel now does not define you, nor does it define the rest of your existence, so please do not give up. Growth doesn't come overnight. It's a long and difficult process, but I think we both know that. But something else I know is that you're more than capable of growth, and I'm sure that deep down somewhere you know that you're capable of it too. Take it one day at a time and focus on getting to tomorrow, because there is a tomorrow and you will be here for it. And not only that, but we'll all be happy that you're here with us. Celebrate mental health wins, no matter how small, and again, remember that there is a tomorrow. That's what's gotten me through some difficult times, and I hope that keeping that in mind will help you as well. Additionally, don't be afraid to reach out and talk to those close to you. Mental health is something that needs to be discussed. Back to the run, when Muchi reaches the top of the ladder bridge, he's going to run through a brief tunnel before entering into an area that's littered with rocks. We're approaching the end of this death camera stretch, which is going to wrap up with a spook quit-out to enter Irithyll of the Boreal Valley. We're going to perform the spook quit-out when we fall off of a cliff up ahead, and we can't normally perform the quit-out where we will because of a kill plane, but because of the death camera view, the kill plane is unloaded. The thing about this upcoming spook quit-out though is that we're kinda going to be performing it blind. If you remember from earlier on in this video, spook quit-outs require you to quit out right when you land, but as you can imagine, it's kinda hard to tell exactly when you hit the ground when playing like this. Because of this, getting the correct timing on the quit out is imperative. Additionally, it's imperative that when you land and quit out, that you land in a location where the ground is stable. That way when you load back in, you'll be standing where you landed. The issue with this spook quit out is that there's a couple areas that you can land at that are unstable ground, so when you quit out and load back in to reset the game back to normal, you'd be standing at the top of the cliff and without the game being broken anymore, since the top of the cliff is the most recent stable ground position you've been in if you land on unstable ground. There is a timing to positioning yourself correctly for it though. Muchi does it by positioning himself at the last rock, casting spook on himself, running 4 steps forward, turning 90 degrees to the right relative to our camera, running 9 steps in that direction, then turning 90 degrees back to the left and running off the cliff. Muchi then has to quit out at the proper time, letting him load back in at Irithyll of the Boreal Valley with the game all back to normal. Accounting for all of this, the timing, the positioning, the execution, is pretty difficult, and there really aren't many visual or audio references to help perform it properly. It's just kind of something you have to learn with practice. When all done properly, Dhalskip saves around 4 minutes. After loading back in, Muchi does quick to get on top of some rocks and then leaps back and bounds, passing over and through a divot in an otherwise very tall invisible barrier. This puts us in Irithyll proper, where there's a lot of water on the ground and the fastest way through it is by spamming roll. In general, you move slower in the water though, so Muchi tries to avoid being in it as much as possible and also spends a lot of time in it regenerating stamina for when he's out of the water, since it's more efficient to use stamina to sprint out of the water than roll while in it. When he exits the water up ahead, Muchi will grab the green blossom on the ground, but it's more of an optional pickup that he'll use to make a fight against a future boss a little more comfortable. Muchi is going to light a bonfire right up here in a location known as the Distant Manor, then cast Spook on himself and run down some stairs where he'll drop a distance that would kill him otherwise. Unless he healed up or rested at the bonfire, which is slower than just casting Spook. After dropping down, we'll grab a large Titanite shard and roll out of the way of some enemies that can kill us in one shot with our current health situation. Same goes with a fire witch standing by the exit who can easily kill us if they choose to perform an attack that has a fire trail chase after us. If they happen to do that attack, you can just quit out to reset them, which Muchi did here, but he believes that he misread the situation and attacks happening behind him, and he thinks that he didn't actually need to quit out. When we load back in, we head into the tunnel carved into the cliff face and head down some stairs to enter the Irithyll dungeon. We aren't going to be spending a lot of time there though, since we'll be performing a spook quit out in a moment to go straight to the profaned capital. While we're here though, we will be picking up some items. The first item we'll grab is another large Titanite shard that's in a jail cell, which is the last large Titanite shard we'll be getting in this run. This won't be happening for another 14 seconds or so though, since the jail cell is on the other side of this area and we have to run past some jailers first. In the meantime, a fun fact about this area is it's actually the same prison that was used when filming Shawshank Redemption. We know this because Muchi grabbing the large Titanite shard is immediately followed by him running into the neighboring cell where he'll grab a pale pine resin from the hole that Andy Dufresne chiseled out. Pale pine resin applies plus 90 magic damage to our weapon for 60 seconds and we'll be using it on the boss Dragon Slayer armor since it's immune to bleed. Muchi just casted Spook on himself, and after running down this long hallway, he'll perform a Spook quit out. This essentially skips the entire Irithyll dungeon section. When we load back in, we'll be near the entrance of the profaned capital, which is an area with a lot of verticality. We begin at the top, and our goal is to get to Yorm the Giant near the bottom. Can you guess how we'll get to Yorm? If you guessed anything other than Spook quit out, then, I don't know. I really felt like I was teeing you up there to get that one right. Muchi casted Spook before running on the bridge because on the bridge we get ambushed by a gargoyle that he strafes around before leaping down to the level below and quitting out as he hits the ground. When we load back in, we're going to cast Spook another time, but this time the distance we'll be dropping really isn't all that high, so we don't need to quit out. After dropping down, Muchi is going to run up the stairs you see just ahead and then enter the boss arena to fight Yorm. The fight against Yorm is kind of like the gimmick fight of this game and is more of a lore fight than a tried and true boss fight. To defeat Yorm, you need to use the Storm Ruler weapon that you can grab in the back of the arena at Yorm's sick-ass throne. To use the Storm Ruler, you need to charge up an attack by holding L2, causing the sword to begin to glow white. At that point, you press R2 and the sword unleashes a giant wind attack that deals a ton of damage. So this fight is all about positioning. The main strategy is to position yourself right in front of Yorm by his legs, which limits the attacks that he'll do, which is a recurring theme in this game when it comes to bosses. When Yorm attacks, he either stomps the ground, which interrupts our charge and staggers us, or he slams the ground, which gives us a window to hit his head, staggering him and bringing him to a knee, letting us get an extra attack in. After our second attack, Yorm begins to transition phases, giving us a window to charge up and unleash another attack. After using the Storm Ruler, you're actually brought down to negative stamina, so you have to wait a bit before being able to use any stamina again. So between our attacks, you'll see Muchi pause before beginning to charge up another, just so he has a little bit of stamina in case he has to roll out of the way like he does with Yorm's next attack. Once we land the final attack, Muchi will then unequip the Storm Ruler and use a Homeward Bone, but we'll wait until the sort of gong noise plays indicating the boss is beaten before choosing to warp back to Firelink Shrine so that we receive our rewards during the Homeward Bone animation. This brings us to the main shopping segment of the game. To start, we'll sell the souls of both Yorm and Wolnir to net a total of 30,000 souls, followed by giving the Shrine Handmaid the Grave Warden's Ashes, which again makes Karthus Rouge and Titanite shards available for purchase. After then buying 12 Titanite shards and enough Karthus Rouge for the rest of the run, Muchi then runs up to Andre to give him the Farron Coal, upgrade our Twin Blades to +5, infuse the Twin Blades with the Sharp Gem to change the scaling with Dex, and allot our Ashen Estus to be regular Estus so we have an extra heal. We then run up to the Firekeeper to level up, where we dump our remaining souls into Dexterity, bringing it up to 41. 40 is the soft cap for Dex scaling, but the extra 1 is just for good measure, and it's also faster than menuing to something else just to level it up once. Muchi then interacts with the bonfire to travel back to the distant Manor bonfire that we lit earlier in Irithyll of the Boreal Valley. When we load in, Muchi equips the Karthus Rouge and re-equips the target shield that we started with as an assassin. Back in Irithyll, we're currently making our way to Pontiff Sulivan, which is a boss that most people will actually take out before fighting Yorm. Also, real quick arachnophobia warning, won't last long, I promise. Just close your eyes and I'll let you know when to open them. After hanging a right in a second, Muchi will run through a watery area full of sewer centipedes where at the end he'll make his way up some stairs and inside of a building. These gangly fucks are why I told arachnophobes to close their eyes, which, speaking of arachnophobes, open your eyes. This part is a running section, and there are 4 dogs that can be pretty irritating, or so Muchi says. The dogs generally aren't an issue, but when they are, they're a big issue, so Muchi will re-equip his armor at times to prevent getting stun-locked by the dogs if they choose to act up. Additionally, Muchi angles his camera during this section to have more of behind the character visible, making it so the dogs don't really teleport to right behind us when they're on screen like we talked about earlier in the run. Again, running segments rely heavily on pathing and stamina management, which makes this segment otherwise fairly manageable. When the dogs go to attack you, you can make super sharp movements left or right, which causes them to miss. Alternatively, you can grab some alluring skulls earlier in the game, which the dogs will aggro onto instead of you if you use them here. Muchi just did a quit out to reset the dogs so they don't follow us as we proceed to the boss arena. Speaking of the upcoming boss, I'd just like to say Pontiff Sulyvahn is maybe the greatest name for a boss in any game ever. Any of those who disagree can meet me on the playground after school to fight. So one of the benefits of playing as Assassin is that we start with the target shield that we just equipped, since the shield has a larger than normal window for parrying, which is key for this fight. As soon as he enters the arena, Muchi will apply some Karthus Rouge and run towards Pontiff Sulyvahn. Pontiff Sulyvahn then charges at us and goes to attack, and Muchi uses the audio cue of where Pontiff Sulyvahn's third step would be as the exact moment to parry and riposte. We follow this up by two-handing our twin blades and doing two L1 attacks, which is immediately followed by us swapping back to the shield, rolling back, and parry riposting again. Muchi then swaps his shield to the Grass Crest shield for increased stamina regen as he does 4 more L1 attacks before Pontiff Sulyvahn phase changes and does his AoE attack. Our next L1 attack staggers Pontiff Sulyvahn, and after a quick L1 into R1 combo, Pontiff Sulyvahn is dead. What a sad day for us Pontiff Sulyvahn stands, losing the opportunity to say Pontiff Sulyvahn's name. One more time for good measure. Pontiff Sulyvahn. When leaving the arena, Muchi unequipped his weapons, the target shield, and some armor to get back under a 30% equip load. Right now there isn't much of note, just again, stamina management and pathing to avoid enemies as we make our way to Anor Londo. Wait, that can't be right. Huh, I guess it is. Anor Londo, we're on our way to Anor Londo. Coming up, Muchi is going to be running through an area that requires us to go up some ramped roofs. To put it bluntly, this part looks terrifying. It always looks like you're constantly about to get blasted by some giant arrows. This is a pretty deceptive vibe that the stretch gives off though. As long as your pathing and stamina management are correct, then you should be fine while running up the roofs and past all the enemies. Muchi intentionally takes the time to regen some stamina as he runs past this silver knight, which makes the knight pull out its sword so it doesn't shoot us out of midair as we jump, which would kill us. At the end of an upcoming hallway, we're going to pull a lever to call an elevator, but the elevator takes forever, so as soon as we pull the lever, we do a quit out to skip the animation of the elevator coming down. We still have to ride the elevator back up though. After loading back in, Muchi has to run up some spiral stairs, and at the top there's a bar lever type thing that he has to push to rotate and raise the platform. While he's pushing the bar lever thing, he's going to do some quick menuing to equip the green blossoms, and he'll also pop a heal as he waits for the platform to arrive at its destination. Just a quick reminder, green blossoms are consumables that increase your stamina regeneration for 60 seconds, and the effects of the green blossoms and the Grass Crest shield stack. So while we have a moment, something that's worth noting about this category since we just healed is the fact that you go so long in this run without being able to refresh your Estus flasks. From the start of the game, you have to go all the way until after Yorm before you can recover any Estus flasks, and right now we're in a stretch where we can't recover them that spans from before Pontiff until the Twin Princes, which is right before the end of the game. It's just an added layer of difficulty to the run that comes from not hitting up many bonfires since they're slow to deal with. So in a moment, Muchi will be jumping onto a railing and falling off a ledge that looks like it should kill him, but there's some schmutz on the ground where we land that prevents fall damage. There is a chest near where we land here, and if you land either on or next to the chest, the fall will most likely kill you, but by running on the railing for just a moment before dropping off, we got the clearance we needed from the chest. As we enter the next boss arena, we use a Karthus Rouge in preparation for one of the more complicated fights in the run, Aldrich. There's a lot of different attacks and attack combinations that you need to know how to deal with, plus he takes different amounts of damage based on where you hit him. Aldrich opened with a poke attack which let us get some head hits in. Once Aldrich's health gets low enough, it'll teleport somewhere in the arena, but it always goes to the opposite quadrant of the arena than the one we're standing in, so by standing on the border between quadrants, Muchi can quickly get to Aldrich and begin attacking once the teleport finishes. After teleporting, Aldrich did a horizontal swipe attack in this run, which is the best one for us as it means that we can deal enough damage to beat Aldrich in just 2 cycles regardless of what opener we were given. Because this is the third Lord of Cinder we've defeated, the other 2 being the Abyss Watchers and Yorm, a cutscene plays right afterwards and we get transported to the High Wall of Lothric. The location we get transported to is the cathedral where Emma is located. Emma is who we got the small Lothric banner from earlier to be able to progress to the Undead Settlement, and if you remember earlier, I also mentioned that the Cathedral doubles as the boss arena for the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. As soon as he loads in, Muchi swipes at Emma to kill her to skip having to talk to her, and then runs behind her to initiate the fight against the Dancer, using a Karthus Rouge and Green Blossom in the process. The main strategy for the Dancer is you want to stay behind her at all times, which limits what she can do. It takes 7 L1 attacks for the Dancer to begin transitioning to phase 2, but 8 L1 attacks to stagger her. Muchi times hits 7 and 8 to be consecutive so that he quickly staggers the Dancer, delaying the phase transition slightly. We then try to hit her at least 6 times before she begins her big spin attack that marks her transition to phase 2. Muchi strafes her big spin and hits her once during it, then hits her as soon as the spin ends, staggering her again and giving us a window to kill her before she really gets to do anything else in phase 2. As soon as the Dancer is dead, Muchi unequips his weapon and some armor to get below 30% equip load, again, and equips the Pale Pine Resin in place of the Karthus Rouge. We then interacted with a statue to place a basin that we got when Emma died, leading to a cutscene that we skipped in a ladder we just climbed. This officially brings us to Lothric Castle. We're currently on our way to fight Dragonslayer Armor, which is one of the harder fights in the run and is the boss I mentioned earlier that's immune to bleed, hence the reason why Muchi equipped the Pale Pine Resin for the magic damage it provides. Getting to Dragonslayer Armor is pretty straightforward pathing and stamina management, with there really not being a whole lot that can go wrong. You mostly just have to pay attention to certain enemies and roll when they throw out an attack that you can't strafe. Muchi is now heading back outside where he's going to be running up a ton of stairs on the peripheries of the castle and running past a bunch of enemies that are good examples of what I just talked about with having to pay attention to what attacks are thrown out. At the top of these stairs we'll be approaching a bridge and some stairs that are guarded by the dragon from Shrek the Third. The moment we step onto the bridge, the dragon from Shrek the Third begins the process of breathing fire along the path we run, and as soon as we're about to be hit by the fire, Muchi quits out. This resets the dragon from Shrek the Third's attack so that when we load back in, we'll be unharmed and able to run to enter the castle proper while the dragon from Shrek the Third winds up to breathe more fire. When we load back in, we head in the entrance on the right into a room with more fucking stairs. There's a few hollows in this room that throw firebombs at us while we run up the stairs, so Muchi angles his camera slightly towards them to make sure he doesn't get hit. At the top of the stairs, Muchi runs past some enemies that can easily stun lock us, then leaps and rolls as he falls off a ledge, giving him a second roll to use mid-air to iframe the fall damage similar to during Doll Skip. After running up these stairs, Muchi will re-equip his Twin Blades armor and pop a Green Blossom in preparation for the fight against the Dragonslayer armor, which again is one of the hardest fights in the run. A lot of this fight revolves around carefully positioning yourself behind the boss's feet to bait 2 attacks, a shield backslam and a horizontal swing. You can bait these attacks one after another in an alternating sequence based on where you're standing, and this sequence is what a lot of people consider to be the bread and butter of the fight. Dragonslayer armor transitions to phase 2 after our 7th hit and doesn't get staggered until we hit him 14 times. When Muchi ends up staggering the armor in this fight, he does so at sort of an inopportune time since it ends up being right as the armor was starting its horizontal blade swing attack, meaning that the armor would throw out a different attack after recovering from being staggered. This means that Muchi is sort of at the whim of the armor here until it throws out its next attack, which Muchi had to identify and dodge accordingly before slipping back into the sequence to finish out the fight. Once we defeat the Dragonslayer armor, we're going to exit the arena, and while doing so, we'll swap out our Pale Pine Resin for our Karthus Rouge since the upcoming bosses aren't immune to bleed like the Dragonslayer armor was. Up ahead is a body on the ground that we're going to loot, giving us the key to the Grand Archives. It takes a moment to get there though, so in the meantime, if any of you watching are named Craig, sup. Just wanted to say hey to any Craigs who might be out there watching. Alright, that's enough nonsense. The doors to the Grand Archives are clearly huge and super heavy, so Muchi does a quit out to skip the door opening animation and save ourselves from exertion. The Grand Archives looks scary, and can be because you can easily get stun locked, but again with consistent pathing and stamina management, anything is possible. Alright, you know what? I changed my mind. The Grand Archives look fucking terrifying. Muchi does insist though that despite how it looks, the stretch of running we just did is usually fine. An example of how this is routed for consistency is up ahead Muchi aggroes a scholar but stops sprinting to regen stamina and let the scholar start attacking, only to sprint again, making the attack always miss. At the top of these stairs, we'll be going back outside and we need to heal, so we'll do a type of animation ledge cancel called an Estus ledge cancel, where we heal as we're walking off a ledge. This truncated a recovery animation that plays after using an Estus flask. Muchi is making his way up and up in the Grand Archives, and when he goes back inside soon, he'll be on the top floor. Also, right here, I'm not really sure what this gargoyle was going for. So we're only going to be inside for a short moment before hanging a right to head back outside. There'll be 3 NPCs on a staircase: Kamui, Kriemhild, and Albert. Albert can stagger us with one hit of his axe, so we have to roll out of the way of that attack, and in this run we also had to dodge arrows from Kamui that can also stagger us. Kriemhild can shoot soul spear attacks at us that stagger as well that we'd have to dodge, but in this run she didn't throw that attack out at us at all. In general, you just have to look at what they're doing and react to it. I know that the last 5 minutes or so have been all about stairs, but up ahead is a giant staircase that's staring us down that we're gonna have to Rocky Balboa to the top of. Similar to in Rocky 2 though, we're going to have some people coming after us as we try to get to the top. This area looks a lot scarier than it is, but certainly not as scary as what Rocky had to go through with all those kids chasing him. Ooh, that's ghastly. Muchi does a quit out when opening up the door at the top of the stairs to skip the animation, and when we load back in, he'll begin the fight against the twin princes, Lorien and Lothric. Similar to previous fights, this fight also relies heavily on having correct positioning to limit what Lorien can do. The main strategy for this boss is to spin him. When you're behind him, he'll constantly try and turn to face you, and if you maintain a good position, you can rotate him and fit attacks in between. Another thing to mention is that you don't want to fight this boss while locked on, because being locked onto him increases how fast he can spin. Plus, if you're directly facing him, there's a significantly higher chance that he'll teleport, slowing down the fight considerably and introducing more RNG to the fight. Lorien staggers on the 10th hit, so Muchi locks on for that attack specifically and gets a combo in before the stagger ends. Bleed is triggered around now, so Muchi does some faster attacks to get it to proc sooner, taking out a huge chunk of health when it does. After reacting to whatever opener we get, Phase 2 is largely the same strategy as Phase 1, with us just circling around the princes and throwing out attacks when we can. The key to this phase is to make sure you're always hitting Lothric, the prince on Lorien's back, because killing Lorien first doesn't end the fight. He gets infinitely revived until you kill Lothric. As soon as Muchi finishes off both princes, but not like that, get your mind out of the gutter, he uses the Dragon Slayer soul and the Dancer's soul to get a ton of souls. Muchi then uses a Homeward Bone to return to the Firelink Shrine, where he's going to spend all those souls on leveling up in preparation for the final boss. First though, we have to place the cinders we got from each of the Lords of Cinders that we've slain onto their respective thrones. On 2 of them, Muchi does another type of animation ledge cancel called a Throne Animation Cancel, and I bet you can guess what it is. By placing a cinder on a throne while you walk off a ledge, the animation for it is cancelled, as you can see clearly when Muchi places the next one. It's the one immediately following it though that's fast to the point where it looks like we don't even do it. After placing the final cinders, Muchi will run up to the Firekeeper to dump all our 317,700 souls into Vigor, bringing it to 32 and massively increasing our max health. Muchi will then interact with the bonfire, initiating a cutscene, but if you skip the cutscene, there's a small window where you can use items, and by using our last Homeward Bone to warp back to our last bonfire, we're brought to the first bonfire in the Kiln of the First Flame, skipping a short bit of running. When we get moving in the kiln, Muchi will unequip the now empty Homeward Bone stack and then re-equip his twin blades and armor. So this upcoming fight is a bit complicated, mainly because the Soul of Cinders staggers differently than every other fight. During certain attack animations, Sind will take increased poise damage by about 50%. This means that depending on when we get our hits in, Sind can be staggered in anywhere from 5.5 to 8 hits. Sind enters Phase 2 at 22 hits and does a combo after transitioning. Our goal is to interrupt him out of that combo by staggering him, because otherwise we have to back off until the combo ends. To do this, we want him to be as close to staggering as possible when he phase transitions, so after Muchi staggers Sind the first time, he only attacks as many times as necessary to bring the total hit count up to 9. Same goes for when Sind is staggered the second time, except instead of 9 hits, Muchi only does 8, bringing the total hits to 17 at the end of the second stagger. Remember, Sind enters phase 2 at 22 hits, so having him at 17 with the second stagger makes it so that after 5 more attacks, we'll not only be at 22 hits total to bring on phase 2, but Sind will also be ready to stagger in as few as 1/2 to 3 more attacks that affect poise. The thing is though, the first 2 attacks we do after phase transitioning don't deal poise damage to him, plus he gets a little poise bonus after transitioning. This means that Sind usually staggers on either hit 26 or 27, and our goal is to have the 26th or 27th hit land when he begins the long combo, staggering him out of it. Now that we've staggered the second time, the rest of the fight is just Muchi generally outplaying Sind. Because of the fact that we leveled up our health so much, we can use health as a resource and trade on a lot of attacks throughout the whole fight. Some attacks you shouldn't trade on though, because you'll take quite a lot of damage or you'll get staggered, so you just have to know which ones are ideal to trade on. Once Muchi does end up defeating Sind though, then all he has to do is link the first flame, officially ending the run. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much on behalf of both myself and Muchi. Additionally, I'd like to give a big thank you to Muchi, who was an absolute treat to work with and helped so much with writing this video. He sat down with me to go over the run and explained not only everything you saw, but even more that had to be left on the cutting room floor for time. Seriously, Muchi's knowledge and skill at this game are one of a kind, and his runs are just honestly so sick. If you want to check out more of his runs, then please do check out his YouTube channel, link is in the description. Similarly, if you want to see more speedruns of the Soulsborne series as a whole, then check out speedsouls.com. It's an enormous speedrunning community for the Soulsborne series, with leaderboards and resources galore for those interested in learning the runs themselves, or even those who just are curious and want to see more and learn more about the runs. The community hosts occasional events that you can watch on their Twitch or YouTube channel, and also had a chance to show off some Dark Souls action at the most recent GDQ with an all bosses race between Danflesh and Regal. Wait, I know those guys. Be sure to check out the VOD of that to see some insane moments, a wild finish, and just what the Speed Souls community is capable of. Additionally, thank you, as always, to everyone who supports the Tomato Anus channel on Patreon. We recently crossed 250 patrons, which is just insane to hear those words coming out of my mouth. To celebrate, we hosted a Q&A live stream, did a reading of an interesting fanfiction, and are currently in the process of having patrons suggest and vote on speedruns to be featured in a future Speedrun Explained. If any of these are things that sound of interest to you, then you can get access to it all for as little as $1 a month, plus things like access to videos early and without ad reads. Fair warning though, the voting process for choosing the next Patron's Choice Speedrun Explained will likely be closing on February 2nd, so if you're watching this part after that date, you've missed the window to vote. That's okay though, because we have more polls like this planned, so you won't be missing out on the chance to do it in the future. There's a link in the description if you're interested, but as always, it's completely unnecessary. And lastly, per usual, check out the Tomato Anus Discord server. The people there are incredibly welcoming and supportive, and if you have something you'd like to talk about, I'm sure there will be people there willing to chat with you. That's all for this video though. This was an any % no teardrop speedrun to beat Dark Souls 3. I've been Tomato Anus, and I hope you have an above average day.